Gentlemen, we got DiJonai Carrington once again. I mean, like, she just can't get out of her own way at this point, huh? From raking people across the head, playing victim, staying white privilege, wearing a blonde wig at that, right? Going on your phone, breaking league policy, facing no punishment, showing black privilege in this league, going at the white girl once again on August 23rd. Although it was your funeral last night, Caitlin Clark led your funeral. I enjoyed watching your funeral last night. It was pretty fun. But DiJonai Carrington, once again, more stuff just keeps coming out. She's bumping Caitlin Clark in the chest.
Imagine spending weeks building up a single date on the calendar, telling the world to circle it, posting about it on social media, promising something, warning your opponents that when that day comes, they better be ready. Now imagine that when that day finally arrives, you don't just lose. You get absolutely humiliated in front of everyone. Your name becomes a punchline. Your warning shot ricochets back and hits you square in the chest. And the person you tried to intimidate doesn't just beat you, she makes history in the process.
Oh my goodness, DiJonai Carrington bookmarking this day just to get embarrassed by Caitlin Clark. The big bad wolf coming through, blowing houses down until she tried to blow down the Caitlin Clark brick house that was built by DiJonai. This lady was 3 for 11, 0 for 3 from the three. A terrible performance. My goodness, tried to come out and take the show, right? Tried to create her moment, and guess what, DiJonai? Now your name is DiJonai Who Carrington. Who cares?
That is exactly what happened to Chicago Sky guard DiJonai Carrington on August 23rd. She had spent weeks turning the rematch against Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever into a personal vendetta. She had posted inflammatory messages. She had hinted at revenge. She had made it clear that this game meant more to her than any other on the schedule. But when the final buzzer sounded at Wintrust Arena, Carrington was left standing in the middle of a 113-90 blowout, staring at a stat sheet that read like a nightmare.
Just play basketball. Like, why is always got to be something with the same repeated offenders, man? Like, it's always like the less talented out of the group, right? The less talented ones always focus on everything but basketball. The ones that's talented, you know what they focus on? Putting the ball in the hoop. The ones that's less focused, that's less talented, you know what they focus on? They focus on being.
If you're enjoying the video so far, take a second to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. 7 points on 3 for 11 shooting, 18 minutes of ineffective basketball. And worst of all, she had just watched Caitlin Clark drop 37 points, dish out 10 assists, and drain a career-high 8 three-pointers right in her face.
All these things that have nothing to do with basketball, DiJonai. Why is it every time you're on my screen, it's never a basketball play? Why is it always drama? Why is it always you being ghetto? Why is it you showing the characteristics of a hood rat? Like, can I please just see some class? Can I see some talent? Please, anything. Show me something. Like, you guys know that meme of the kid with the stick saying do something? That's how I feel about DiJonai.
The date Carrington had circled, 8/23, ended up being the night Clark made 8 threes and the Fever won by 23 points. It was poetic justice on a scale so absurd that you couldn't script it if you tried. But to truly understand the magnitude of what happened on that court, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to understand the history, the tension, the social media posts, and the growing controversy that turned a routine regular season game into one of the most talked about matchups of the entire NBA season.
Bag DiJonai clout chaser Carrington. Careful what you wish for, DiJonai. Be careful what you wish for. You're the one that circled 8/23 on the calendar. You're the one who tweeted out 8/23 as if it was some date we all should pay attention to. And people paid attention and saw you. Ooh, you had a bad game. Oh, but 8/23. Fair. Caitlin Clark makes 8 three-pointers. The Indiana Fever win by 23 points. Great foresight on your end, DiJonai.
Because this wasn't just about basketball. This was about pride, about reputation, about the clash between a player who thrives on drama and a player who lets her game do all the talking. And when the dust settled, only one of them came out looking like a star. The other was left to face the music, her reputation in tatters, her credibility shot, and her name forever associated with one of the most embarrassing cell phones in sports history.
You look childish and corny, then going down, shoulder bumping. Like, that's weird, bro. That is weird. And we got to start calling things for what they is. They're weird. People that do this is weird. Weirdos. That's just the truth. And this is what BLACK privilege looks like. You able to mock somebody and get away with it, and then come down and bump somebody intentionally and get away with it. Can you imagine if Caitlyn would have did the same thing to somebody? Oh, y'all would have been having a fit. Y'all would have been like...
The internet doesn't forget, and it certainly doesn't forgive. And on this particular night, the internet had a field day at Carrington's expense. The build-up to this game had been unlike anything the WNBA had seen in years. Social media was buzzing. Sports talk shows were debating the implications. Fans on both sides were fired up, ready to see their team emerge victorious. The stakes were high, not just for playoff positioning, but for personal pride.
They're huffing and puffing just to come out here and get embarrassed. Like, let's just start right here, man. Let's start right here. Why is DiJonai poking the bear? Look at her. Once again, trying to create her moment. Look at her. Why you keep acting like I'm fouling you? Look, and then she's all in the ref face, spitting on him. Look at this. Somebody give her the t-shirt, man. Give her the tech. Give her the tech. Look at this. I'm not doing anything. I'm just guarding up. Okay. You want the smoke? Caitlyn gonna give it to you. You want the smoke? She's gonna give it.
Carrington had made it personal, and now she had to live with the consequences. The arena was packed. The atmosphere was electric, and when the ball tipped off, everyone knew they were about to witness something special. What they didn't know was just how special it would be for one player and how disastrous it would be for the other. The stage was set for a showdown, and the performers delivered in ways that nobody could have predicted. The story begins on August 8th. The Indiana Fever were hosting the Chicago Sky at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It was a heated matchup, as most games between these two teams have become since Caitlin Clark entered the league. The rivalry had been building for years, fueled by the intense battles between Clark and Angel Reese in college, and it carried over into the professional ranks with a vengeance.
DiJonai Carrington had circled on her calendar and wanted the world to see happen tonight. And how did it turn out? Caitlin Clark had 37 points, 10 assists, 8 threes, and we got this lovely reaction. But I want to point out something that happened in the game. Some of the Chicago Sky, including DiJonai Carrington, to me, were looking for a fight this game. And Caitlin, instead of talking about it in the media, just did it with her basketball skills. And
if you're enjoying the video so far, take a second to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Every time these two teams met, there was a palpable tension in the air. Fans packed the arenas. Ratings soared. The league took notice of the increased interest and capitalized on the growing rivalry. But on this particular night, the tension reached a breaking point that no one could have anticipated. In the third quarter, DiJonai Carrington committed a flagrant foul on Sophie Cunningham. Cunningham was running the floor on a fast break layup, and Carrington came from behind and caught her in the head and neck area. The contact was severe. Cunningham went down hard. The officials immediately stopped play and went to the monitor to review what had just happened.
The foul of Caitlin Clark right here. Look at this, man. So she's reaching in for the ball, fouling Caitlin Clark. We can visibly see she's going in. Caitlin has the ball all the way out here. So clearly you didn't get basketball. You got something else. If you got basketball, the ball would have, left Caitlin Clark's hand. It would have got, deflected or something. It would have went out the way. It would have been a loose ball. But no, Caitlin still has full control of her dribble. What she doesn't have control over is you all in her space, hand checking her, smacking her. And the referee sees it, calls the whistle, and you immediately, instead of reacting, this is how I know you're a victim. You get weaponized by the other victims in the black community.
Slow motion replays showed Carrington's arm making contact with Cunningham's head in a way that was clearly dangerous and unnecessary. The referees huddled together, discussed the play, and then made their decision. It was a flagrant 2 foul, which carries an automatic ejection. Carrington was tossed from the game. She walked off the court shaking her head, clearly disagreeing with the call. But the evidence was damning. The contact was excessive, the foul was dangerous, and the league agreed, fining her $1,000 for the incident. But the punishment didn't stop Carrington from making her feelings known. She had a platform and she was going to use it. After the ejection, she took to social media with a message that would set the stage for everything that followed. She posted 2 simple numbers on X, 8/23. That was the date of the next matchup between the Fever and the Sky. It was a warning, a promise, a declaration that she would be back and she would make her presence felt.
Asked you to clothesline Sophie Cunningham, go into the locker room and tweet, "White privilege." Nobody forced you to do it, but she did it. And he put the spotlight on you. So coming into this game, we were all asking, what's DiJonai Carrington going to do 8/23? And she stunk up the joint. DiJonai Clout Chaser Carrington. It wouldn't be a game without her clout chasing, without her back up to her old dirty tricks, trying to get a rise, trying to get a reaction out of Caitlin Clark. DiJonai Carrington, she's so unstable.
She wanted everyone to know that August 23rd was circled on her calendar. She was coming for revenge. She was coming to prove a point, and she was going to make sure that the Fever and everyone else remembered her name. But she didn't stop there. On Threads, Carrington posted something even more incendiary. She wrote "white privilege" and tagged the Indiana Fever's official account. The implication was clear. She believed that Caitlin Clark, the white superstar, was receiving preferential treatment from the league and the officials. She believed that the physical defense Clark faced was being unfairly scrutinized while other players got away with the same level of aggression. She believed that the system was rigged in Clark's favor, and she was going to call it out. It was a loaded statement, and it immediately ignited a firestorm of debate across social media. Fans took sides. Analysts weighed in. The controversy grew so large that it transcended basketball and became a cultural flashpoint.
DiJonai Carrington has destroyed her reputation. She has absolutely destroyed her reputation. And the last couple of weeks have not been good to her. They've really not been, because everybody knew coming into the Indiana Fever game, like, she's not there taking off people's heads in every game. Like, we saw when Mo Billings was running in a layup, we saw what an actual chase down block, or what an actual block from behind.
Supporters of Carrington argued that she was speaking truth to power, calling out a system that consistently favored Clark in the eyes of the media and the referees. They pointed to examples of physical play that went uncalled when it involved Clark and claimed that the league was protecting its golden goose. Critics, on the other hand, accused Carrington of making baseless accusations and trying to create a narrative that didn't exist. They pointed out that Clark was one of the most heavily fouled players in the league, often leaving games with visible bruises and scratches, and that the idea of white privilege in a league where the majority of players are black seemed like a reach. They argued that Carrington was deflecting from her own poor play and trying to create a controversy where none existed. Regardless of where you stood on the issue, one thing was undeniable. Carrington had turned the August 23rd rematch into something much bigger than a basketball game. It was now a referendum on race, officiating, and the treatment of the WNBA's biggest star. And Carrington had essentially dared Clark and the Fever to come into her building and prove her wrong. It was a bold move, a risky move, and as we would soon find out, it was a move that would backfire in spectacular fashion. The days leading up to the game were filled with anticipation. Fans circled the date on their calendars right alongside Carrington. Sports talk shows debated what would happen when the two teams met again. Would Carrington back up her words with a dominant performance? Would Clark wilt under the pressure and the physicality? Or would the Fever prove that they were simply the better team, regardless of all the noise? The stage was set, the drama was at its peak, and when the ball finally tipped off at Wintrust Arena, everyone was watching to see who would emerge victorious. The media coverage was intense. Every outlet was running stories about the upcoming game. The narratives were everywhere. Some painted Carrington as a villain, someone who was using race baiting to deflect from her own shortcomings. Others painted her as a truth teller, someone who was brave enough to speak out against a system that favored a white superstar. Clark, for her part, stayed above the fray. She didn't respond to Carrington's posts. She didn't engage in the social media wars. She simply kept preparing for the game, knowing that the best response would come on the court. That's what champions do. They let their performance speak for itself. And Clark was ready to deliver a performance that would silence all the doubters once and for all. The game started with both teams trading blows. The Chicago Sky came out with energy, feeding off the home crowd and the emotional weight of the moment. Carrington was active early, trying to impose her will on the defensive end. She was physical with Clark from the opening possession, bumping her off screens, swiping at the ball, and making sure every touch was contested. She wanted to send a message. She wanted to establish that she wasn't going to be intimidated by Clark's reputation. She wanted to prove that she belonged on the same court as the league's biggest star. For the first quarter, it seemed like Carrington's strategy might actually work. Clark was held in check for the most part, and Chicago managed to stay close. Carrington was in Clark's space, denying her clean looks at the basket. The Fever's offense was a bit disjointed, and Clark was forced to give up the ball earlier than she usually prefers. The Sky's defense was swarming, and Clark was having trouble finding her rhythm. By halftime, the Sky actually held a slim 51-50 lead. The arena was buzzing. Fans were starting to believe that Carrington's bold predictions might come true. The energy was palpable. The Sky were playing with confidence, and Carrington was at the center of it all, directing traffic and barking orders at her teammates. But then the second half happened, and everything changed. The turning point came midway through the second quarter. Clark was dribbling on the perimeter, sizing up her defender, when Carrington was called for a defensive foul. It was a fairly routine call. Hand-checking, illegal contact, nothing egregious. But Carrington reacted as if she had been wronged. She immediately turned to the referee and started arguing. Her face was contorted with anger. Her arms were flailing. She was clearly frustrated that she had been called for a foul. But then she did something that would define the rest of the night. She turned back toward Clark and started mocking her. Carrington threw her head back dramatically. She flailed her arms in exaggerated fashion. She made it abundantly clear that she believed Clark had flopped, that she had sold the contact to draw the whistle. It was a blatant attempt to embarrass Clark in front of the crowd and the television audience. The crowd responded with cheers, feeding off Carrington's theatrics. But the smart observers knew what was happening. Carrington was playing right into Clark's hands. She was giving Clark a reason to get angry, a reason to prove her wrong. It was also a massive tactical error, because instead of getting rattled, instead of getting drawn into a war of words, instead of complaining to the officials or engaging in the theatrics that Carrington clearly wanted, Clark responded the only way that mattered. She took the basketball, sized up her defender, and hit a step-back three-pointer directly in Carrington's face. The shot was pure. The rotation was perfect. The net barely moved as the ball swished through, and the message was unmistakable. You can mock me all you want, but I'm still going to score. The crowd went quiet for a moment, and then the Fever bench erupted. Clark didn't celebrate excessively. She didn't stare down Carrington or taunt her back. She simply backpedaled down the court with a look of cold determination, ready for the next possession. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes told the story. She was locked in, she was focused, and she was about to make Carrington pay for her arrogance. But the drama wasn't over. On the subsequent play, as the two teams transitioned back down the court, Carrington ran into Clark. It wasn't a clean basketball move, it was a shoulder bump, a cheap shot, the kind of move that players use to send a message without getting caught by the officials. Clark absorbed the contact, steadied herself, and then gave Carrington a dismissive wave. She didn't argue. She didn't complain, she just waved her hand as if to say, "You're not worth my time." It was a gesture that infuriated Carrington even more. She was trying to get under Clark's skin, but nothing was working. Clark was unflappable. She was locked in. And she was about to unleash a performance that would silence every critic and skeptic in the building. The dismissive wave became one of the defining images of the night. It captured the essence of the rivalry perfectly. Carrington was playing the role of the aggressor, trying to intimidate and provoke. Clark was playing the role of the cool-headed champion, refusing to engage in the nonsense and simply letting her game do the talking. From that moment forward, Caitlin Clark was in a different zone. She had been good in the first half, she had been solid, but after Carrington's mocking and the shoulder bump, something clicked. It was as if Clark decided that enough was enough. She wasn't going to engage in the nonsense. She wasn't going to let Carrington's antics distract her. She was simply going to dominate, and dominate she did. The third quarter was an absolute masterpiece of offensive basketball. Clark started the half by hitting 2 quick threes, both from well beyond the arc. The Sky defenders were playing up on her, trying to deny her space, but Clark's range was simply too deep. She was pulling up from 30 feet with confidence, and the ball was hitting nothing but net. The crowd, which had been so loud and boisterous in the first half, was now growing quiet. They were witnessing something special, and they knew it. Every time Chicago tried to make a run, Clark answered with a dagger. Every time Carrington tried to get physical, Clark responded with a step-back jumper. It was a classic case of a great player using her opponent's aggression as fuel. The more Carrington tried to rattle her, the better Clark played. It was almost as if Clark was feeding off Carrington's energy, using it to elevate her own game to a level that nobody could match. By the end of the third quarter, Clark had already eclipsed her scoring average, and the Fever had built a double-digit lead. The Sky were frustrated. They had tried everything to slow Clark down, and nothing was working. They had doubled her. They had trapped her. They had fouled her. None of it mattered. Clark was on a mission, and she wasn't going to be stopped. But she wasn't done. The fourth quarter was even more devastating. Clark continued to find her teammates, threading passes through tight windows and setting up open shots. Kelsey Mitchell was the primary beneficiary, pouring in 30 points of her own. Mitchell was hitting from everywhere, and Clark was finding her with pinpoint accuracy. The Fever's offense was firing on all cylinders, and the Sky had no answers. Chicago tried everything. They switched defenses. They played zone. They double-teamed Clark. Nothing worked. She was too quick, too smart, too skilled. She was seeing the floor in a way that few players ever have. Her court vision was otherworldly. Her passing was precise. Her shooting was unstoppable. She was putting on a clinic, and everyone in the building could appreciate what they were witnessing. By the time the final buzzer sounded, Clark had finished with 37 points, 10 assists, and 8 three-pointers. She had shot 8 of 12 from beyond the arc, an efficiency rate that is virtually unheard of for a player who takes that many deep attempts. She also added 7 rebounds for good measure. The Fever had scored 113 points, the most they had put up all season. They had made 18 three-pointers as a team, a franchise record, and they had won by 23 points in a game that was never really that close after the first half. For Carrington, it was a complete and total nightmare. She had talked all that noise, circled the date, made the inflammatory posts, and then she went out and played one of the worst games of her career. She finished with just 7 points on 3 of 11 shooting. She was 0 for 3 from three-point range. She played only 18 minutes before being relegated to the bench in garbage time. Her plus-minus was -5, meaning the Sky were actually better when she wasn't on the floor. It was a humiliating performance, and the internet was merciless in its reaction. The memes started almost instantly. The clips of Carrington mocking Clark were juxtaposed with clips of Clark hitting threes in her face. The narrative had flipped completely. What was supposed to be Carrington's night of redemption had become Clark's coronation. The online commentary was brutal. Fans were posting Carrington's 8:23 tweet alongside Clark's stat line. The irony was too perfect to ignore. Carrington had told everyone to watch that date, and when they did, they watched her get absolutely destroyed. But the story didn't end with the final buzzer. If anything, that's when the controversy exploded to an even greater scale. After the game, a photo began circulating on social media that changed the conversation entirely. The photo showed Caitlin Clark's left arm, and it was covered in scratches. Deep, angry, red scratches that ran from her wrist all the way up to her shoulder. The marks were extensive, they were visible, and they immediately raised questions about exactly what had happened on the court. This wasn't just the normal wear and tear of a physical basketball game. These were the kinds of scratches that come from fingernails raking across skin. From defensive players who are grabbing, holding, and clawing in an attempt to slow down an unstoppable force. The photo went viral within minutes. Fans were outraged. How could the league allow its biggest star to be subjected to this level of physical abuse? How could the officials have missed all this contact? Why wasn't more being done to protect Clark from the constant hacking and grabbing that seemed to define every game she played? The outrage wasn't limited to social media either. Sports analysts began dissecting the footage, freeze-framing every questionable play. The consensus was clear: Clark was being targeted. She was being subjected to a level of physicality that went beyond what was acceptable in a professional basketball game, and the officials were allowing it to happen. The scratches were proof of what many fans had been saying for months. Clark was being treated unfairly, and the league wasn't doing enough about it. This wasn't the first time either. Over the course of the season, Clark had been hip-checked into the stands. She had been poked in the eye. She had been struck in the throat. Alyssa Thomas had actually been suspended for making contact with Clark's throat in a previous game. And yet, the physicality continued. It was as if every opponent had decided that the only way to slow Clark down was to cross the line between physical defense and assault. The league had issued fines and suspensions, but they didn't seem to deter anyone. Republican lawmakers had even called on the WNBA to investigate player safety issues involving Clark. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver had publicly stated that Clark had become a political football amid heated debates about officiating and physical play. The scrutiny was intense, and it was only getting worse. The scratches on Clark's arm were just the latest piece of evidence in a growing case that the league was failing to protect its most valuable asset. But the debate wasn't one-sided. There were also those who argued that Clark was simply experiencing the normal physicality of professional basketball. They pointed out that the WNBA has always been a physical league, that players have always used aggression to slow down elite scorers. They argued that Clark's supporters were overreacting, that she was being coddled by the media and the league office. They accused Clark of being too whiny, too quick to complain, too soft for the physical demands of the professional game. It was a contentious debate with no clear resolution. But one thing was certain: the scratches on Clark's arm became a symbol. For her supporters, they represented a broader trend of unfair targeting against a generational talent. For her detractors, they were proof that Clark couldn't handle the physicality of the league she was dominating. And in the middle of it all, Clark herself refused to engage in the debate. She didn't complain about the scratches in her post-game press conference. She didn't accuse Carrington of any wrongdoing. She simply stated that she played physical basketball and expected the same from her opponents. It was a measured, mature response that only added to her growing legend. The post-game press conference was telling. Clark was calm and collected. She answered questions with the poise of a veteran. When asked about the scratches, she shrugged them off. When asked about Carrington's antics, she took the high road. She talked about her team's performance, her teammates' contributions, and the importance of the win. She didn't take the bait. She didn't engage in the drama. She was all business, and that professionalism made her look even more impressive in contrast to Carrington's theatrics. Now, let's talk about the numbers. Because the numbers are where this story gets truly poetic. DiJonai Carrington had posted 8/23 on social media. She had told the world to pay attention to that date. She had made it clear that August 23rd was her day, her moment, her chance for revenge. And what actually happened on August 23rd? Caitlin Clark made 8 three-pointers. And the Indiana Fever won by 23 points, 8 threes, 23-point victory. Carrington's own post had accidentally predicted her own humiliation. She was the one who told everyone to show up and watch. And when they did, they watched Clark put on one of the greatest individual performances in WNBA history. Clark's stat line was staggering: 37 points, 10 assists, 8 three-pointers, 7 rebounds. She was efficient from everywhere on the floor, shooting over 50% from the field and over 66% from beyond the arc. She orchestrated an offense that scored 113 points, the second highest total in franchise history. She made her teammates better, setting up Kelsey Mitchell for 30 points and distributing the ball with the precision of a seasoned veteran. Mitchell and Clark combined for 67 points and 14 assists, accounting for the vast majority of Indiana's offensive production. But the most mind-blowing statistic of all was this. It was Clark's 5th career game with at least 30 points and 10 assists. That's more than the rest of WNBA history combined. Let that sink in for a moment. Every other player in the entire history of the WNBA put together has only managed to record 4 such games. 4. Clark has 5, in just her 3rd professional season, and she missed most of her 2nd year due to injury. She's already surpassed the entirety of league history in that one statistical category. She's rewriting the record books at a pace that is almost incomprehensible. And she's doing it while being scratched, hacked, bumped, and targeted by opponents who can't seem to stop her any other way. The physical toll is evident, but the results are undeniable. Clark is putting up numbers that the league has never seen before. She's breaking records that were thought to be untouchable. She's redefining what's possible in the WNBA, and she's doing it with a style of play that is both beautiful and brutally effective. The Fever improved to 25-14 with the win, solidifying their position as the 3rd seed in the playoff race. The Sky dropped to 15-23 and were officially eliminated from postseason contention. It was Indiana's 9th consecutive victory over Chicago, dating back to the 2024 season. The rivalry that was once supposed to be defined by Clark and Angel Reese has become painfully one-sided. Chicago traded Reese before the season, and now they're watching the playoffs from home, while Clark continues to break records and cement her legacy. The irony of Carrington's posts was not lost on anyone. She had made the date about herself. She had tried to steal the spotlight, and in doing so, she had created the stage for Clark to deliver a performance that would be remembered for years to come. It was the ultimate backfire, the ultimate lesson in being careful what you wish for. Because when you put a target on your own back and dare the world to take a shot, you better be prepared for the consequences. The social media reaction was swift and brutal. Carrington's mentions were flooded with memes and ridicule. Fans were posting the 823 tweet alongside Clark's stats, pointing out the hilarious irony. Others were posting videos of Carrington's flop-mocking gesture, followed immediately by Clark's step-back 3. The contrast was stark. Carrington had tried to embarrass Clark, and she had ended up embarrassing herself. The internet was having a field day, and Carrington was the punchline. To fully appreciate what Clark accomplished on that night, we need to put her performance in historical context. 37 points and 10 assists is an elite stat line in any league, but in the WNBA, it's virtually unprecedented. The league has seen some incredible players over the years: Cynthia Cooper, Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Brianna Stewart, but none of them have accumulated 30-point, 10-assist games the way Clark has. She's not just matching the greats, she's surpassing them. Think about what it takes to score 30 points in a WNBA game. The league is known for its physical defense. Teams play hard, they contest every shot, they make you work for every basket. Scoring 30 points requires not just talent, but stamina, focus, and a killer instinct. Now add 10 assists to that. That means Clark is not only scoring at an elite level, but she's also creating opportunities for her teammates. She's making everyone around her better. She's the complete package. The fact that she has done this 5 times already, in just her 3rd season, is staggering. It's the kind of stat that makes you do a double take. You read it once, you think it's a mistake. You read it again, and you realize it's real. Clark is rewriting the record books in real time, and we're all lucky enough to be watching. But what's even more impressive is the context in which she's doing it. Clark is playing in the most scrutinized era of WNBA history. Every game is analyzed, every possession is dissected, every mistake is magnified. The pressure on her shoulders is immense, and yet she continues to perform at the highest level. She doesn't crumble under the weight of expectations. She thrives. She uses the pressure as fuel. She turns criticism into motivation. She's a champion in every sense of the word. The comparison to other greats is inevitable. Taurasi is considered by many to be the greatest WNBA player of all time. She has championships. She has records. She has a legacy that spans decades. But even Taurasi didn't dominate the stat sheet the way Clark is dominating it right now. Clark is putting up numbers that are on par with the greatest seasons in league history, and she's doing it with a style of play that is uniquely her own. Her deep threes, her pinpoint passing, her court vision, these are the traits of a generational talent. And then there's Carrington. Where does she fit into this narrative? She's a role player, a solid defender, someone who can contribute on both ends of the floor. But she's not a star. She's not someone who should be trying to take on the league's biggest superstar in a war of words. That's a losing battle, and she found that out the hard way. Carrington's mistake was thinking that she could get under Clark's skin. She thought that Clark would be rattled by the mocking. She thought that Clark would lose her composure. She was wrong. Clark is different. She's not fazed by the noise. She doesn't care about the social media posts. She doesn't engage in the drama. She just plays basketball. And when she plays, she's unstoppable. That's what makes her so dangerous. She doesn't need to talk. She doesn't need to post. She doesn't need to provoke. She just needs the ball in her hands, and she will take care of the rest. So what's the takeaway from all of this? For DiJonai Carrington, it's a painful lesson in humility. She talked a big game. She made promises she couldn't keep. She tried to intimidate a player who cannot be intimidated. And in the end, she was left standing in the middle of a blowout, her reputation in tatters and her credibility shot. The memes will continue. The jokes will persist. Every time someone mentions August 23rd, they'll think of Clark's 8 threes and the 23-point victory. Carrington's name will forever be associated with one of the most embarrassing cell phones in sports history. The internet doesn't forget. Carrington's social media posts will live on forever, serving as a permanent reminder of what happens when you bite off more than you can chew. She thought she was going to be the hero of the story. She thought she was going to be the one making headlines. Instead, she became a cautionary tale, a warning to anyone who thinks they can take on greatness and come out on top. For Caitlin Clark, it's yet another chapter in a career that is already legendary. She proved once again that she cannot be rattled. She cannot be intimidated. Every time opponents try to get physical, she responds with threes. Every time they try to get under her skin, she responds with assists. Every time they leave marks on her arms, she leaves marks on the scoreboard. She is the ultimate competitor, a player who thrives on adversity and uses criticism as fuel. The scratches will heal, the bruises will fade. But that stat line, 37 points, 10 assists, 8 three-pointers, is forever. It's history. It's a reminder that no amount of physicality can stop greatness when greatness refuses to be stopped. As for the league, the debate over player safety and officiating isn't going anywhere. Fans will keep watching the footage. They'll keep freeze-framing every contentious possession. They'll keep asking where the line is between physical basketball and something else entirely, and they'll keep wondering if the league is doing enough to protect its biggest star. The WNBA has a player who is breaking records, drawing massive audiences, and making the league more relevant than it has ever been. But that star is also leaving the court with scratches on her arms and a target on her back. At some point, the league has to decide what kind of product it wants to be. Does it want to be a physical, gritty, no-holds-barred competition where anything goes? Or does it want to protect its stars and ensure that the best players can perform at their highest level without fear of injury or excessive contact? It's a difficult balance to strike, and there are no easy answers. But one thing is certain, Caitlin Clark isn't waiting for anyone to figure it out. She's not complaining about the scratches. She's not asking for special treatment. She's just going to keep scoring, keep assisting, keep winning, and keep letting her basketball do all the talking. Because when you're that good, you don't need to say a word. The scoreboard says it all. And on August 23rd, the scoreboard told a story that DiJonai Carrington will never be able to live down. It told the story of a player who talked too much and couldn't back it up. It told the story of a generational talent who rose above the noise and delivered a performance for the ages. It told the story of 8 threes, 23 points, and one very loud, very painful lesson in humility. The calendar will keep turning. The games will keep coming. But that date, 8/23, will always belong to Caitlin Clark. and DiJonai Carrington will always be the punchline. What comes next for these two players and these two teams remains to be seen. The Fever are heading to the playoffs with confidence and momentum. The Sky are heading home, left to reflect on what might have been. Carrington will have to live with the consequences of her actions, while Clark will continue to build her legacy. The rivalry may continue, but the dynamic has shifted. Carrington tried to take on the Giant, and she got crushed. That's a lesson that will stay with her for a long time. And for Clark, the sky's the limit. She's already achieved so much, and she's just getting started. The WNBA has never seen anything like her, and we may never see anything like her again. So enjoy the show, because Caitlin Clark is just getting warmed up.